Hello everyone, and welcome back. If you thought Chad DiMera's return to Salem would be emotional, think again. Because days of our lives may be setting up something far more devastating than a simple homecoming. This may not be a story about reunion. It may be a story about regret, missed chances, and a man returning home only to realize that everything changed while he was gone. Because Chad may be coming back expecting answers, closure, or maybe even a fresh start. But instead, he could be walking straight into one of the most painful shocks of his life. And honestly, that is what makes this return so exciting. Connor Floyd is stepping into the role at a crucial moment, and the writers may be ready to give him an entrance that is not just memorable, but explosive. So let's break down why Chad's comeback could turn tragic almost immediately, and why this storyline may end up being much bigger than a simple love triangle. One of the most painful possibilities in this storyline is that Chad may come back to Salem believing he still has a chance to control the situation. He likely knows his feelings for Kat never truly went away. That much feels obvious, but instead of acting on those feelings, Chad may have chosen restraint. From his perspective, keeping his distance was probably not about giving up. It was about protecting what matters most. Thomas is still the center of this entire situation, and Chad understands that one emotional mistake could reopen a custody battle he cannot afford to trigger. The promise he made was not symbolic. It came with real consequences. If he crosses that line, Jack and Jennifer could easily be pulled back into the conflict, and the fragile balance he worked so hard to maintain could collapse. That is why Chad may have convinced himself that stepping back was the mature decision. He may have believed that waiting, staying disciplined, and putting his son first would ultimately spare everyone more pain. But that is exactly what makes this storyline so tragic. Because Chad may return only to realize that while he was trying to be careful, life did not pause for him. The emotional space he left behind may not have remained untouched. Someone else may have entered it. And that is the cruel irony at the center of this story. Chad may discover that doing the responsible thing did not protect him from loss. It may have brought him straight to it. That is why the idea of being too late feels so powerful here. Too late to reclaim what he quietly stepped away from. Too late to deny that Kat still matters to him. Too late to stop a new bond from growing while he was holding himself back. If Chad walks into Salem with that realization waiting for him, then his return may become heartbreaking almost immediately. The moment Kat and EJ start moving closer, this story becomes far more dangerous than a simple romantic triangle. If Kat were connecting with someone completely outside Chad's world, that would already be difficult enough. But EJ is Chad's brother, and that changes the emotional stakes instantly. This is no longer just about Chad watching someone he still cares about drift away. It is about that shift happening inside his own family, in the most personal and uncomfortable way possible. Kat and EJ getting closer would force Chad to confront two losses at once. The loss of emotional ground with Kat, and the loss of trust inside the DiMera family. Because if EJ becomes the man Kat starts leaning on, Chad may not see it as a random turn of events. He may see it as a deeply personal betrayal. What makes the situation even more layered is that Kat may not be fully over Chad. That emotional uncertainty is what gives the story real dramatic power. It suggests this is not a clean ending followed by a clean new beginning. Instead, Kat may be caught between unresolved feelings from the past and a new connection that is becoming harder to ignore. That inner conflict makes every step toward EJ feel more complicated, and more dangerous. And EJ is exactly the kind of character who can make that complication worse. He is charming, confident, and often most persuasive when someone is emotionally vulnerable. If Kat feels disappointed, confused, or emotionally adrift, EJ may know exactly how to step in and make himself feel indispensable. That is what could make this shift so painful for Chad. It would not just look like Kat moved on. It may look like EJ took advantage of the opening Chad left behind. It is not just about romance. It is about timing, family loyalty, emotional access, and the devastating possibility that Chad may come home and realize he has already lost ground in ways he never expected. If the writers want Chad's return to hit hard immediately, there may be no stronger choice than having him walk straight into a moment that changes everything at once. Chad may come home expecting tension, awkwardness, maybe even unfinished business. But he may still believe he has time to understand what has changed before it fully slips away. And that is exactly why the shock would land so brutally if his first real discovery is not a conversation, but a sight he cannot emotionally prepare for. Imagine Chad stepping into the DiMera mansion and already sensing that something is different. The atmosphere may feel too quiet. EJ may not answer right away. Chad may move through the house with a growing sense that something is off, even before he knows what it is. Then he heads upstairs, opens a bedroom door, and suddenly everything becomes painfully clear. If Chad catches EJ and Kat together, that is not just dramatic. That is devastating. Because in that moment, Chad would be hit by multiple emotions at once. He would not just be reacting as a man with unresolved feelings for Kat. He would be reacting as a brother who may feel blindsided, disrespected, and betrayed inside his own family. Kat represents the emotional future he may have quietly hoped was still possible. EJ represents the person who may have stepped into that space without warning. Seeing both of them together would turn private heartbreak into public humiliation in an instant. It forces Chad into raw emotional territory right away. There is no slow adjustment period. No gentle re-entry into Salem. No time to hide behind composure. Every feeling he tried to control, jealousy, regret, anger, loss, could erupt all at once. And that gives Connor Floyd the kind of entrance that immediately defines his version of Chad as wounded, human, and emotionally dangerous. It would also put Kat in an incredibly complicated position. Because if she still has unresolved feelings for Chad, then being seen with EJ could trigger guilt and confusion just as quickly as it triggers desire or defensiveness. And EJ, depending on how he responds, could make the entire scene even uglier. He could act unapologetic, he could become territorial, or he could deliberately push Chad further, knowing exactly how painful the moment already is. That is why this would not just be a shocking scene. It would be a turning point. Because once Chad sees something like that, his return stops being a comeback story and becomes emotional war. What makes this storyline especially strong is that the fallout may not stay contained to Chad, Kat, and EJ for very long. That is where the real dramatic potential begins. If Chad comes home to a shock this personal, then the consequences are almost guaranteed to spread. His immediate reaction alone could change the direction of several storylines. He may lash out at EJ. He may confront Kat before either of them is ready to explain what happened. Or he may try to hold himself together at first, only to unravel later when the full emotional weight finally hits him. No matter how he responds, the damage would likely move outward fast. Thomas could be affected almost immediately, especially if Chad's emotional stability starts slipping. The custody agreement, which may have felt like background tension before, could suddenly become central again. If Chad reacts impulsively or if his connection to Kat becomes impossible to deny, then Jack and Jennifer could easily be pulled back into the conflict. What started as one painful discovery could quickly become a legal, emotional, and family-wide problem. If Chad sees this as a brother crossing a line, then the fallout is not just romantic. It becomes deeply personal and familial. The DiMera family already carries enough distrust, rivalry, and buried resentment. A situation like this could rip those fractures open again. Chad may not just feel like EJ hurt him. He may feel like EJ knowingly took advantage of a vulnerable situation and made it worse. Kat, meanwhile, could become the emotional center of the fallout. She may be torn between what she feels, what she intended, and what this new connection with EJ now means. If she never meant for things to go this far, then Chad's return could force her to confront feelings she has been trying not to examine too closely. That makes her position unstable in the most interesting way, because she would not just be choosing between two men. She would be dealing with guilt, pressure, and the realization that her choices may now affect multiple families. From a writing standpoint, that is why this story works so well. It gives Chad immediate pain and urgency. It gives EJ a morally loaded conflict with real emotional consequences. It gives Kat internal conflict instead of simple romance. And it gives the audience a reason to keep watching after the initial shock wears off, because the first explosion would only be the beginning. The real hook is what happens next. Does Chad fight for Kat now that he realizes what he lost? Does he go to war with EJ? Does he try to bury his feelings and fail? Or does this homecoming become the moment he realizes Salem is no longer the place he thought he was returning to? That is the kind of question that keeps a storyline alive. Because the true power of Chad's return may not be the shock of what he sees. It may be the chain reaction that begins the second he sees it.